We're here.
Oh, there we go.
We are live. Good morning, everyone.
It is Kelly Turner with Total Mortgage.
And Sanam Solati Yurczyk with New England Prestige Realty.
And today we're talking about
new construction.
That has been like the hot topic over the last couple of months.
Oh my goodness. So everybody keeps saying, like, where's the inventory?
Where is the inventory? And if you look, there was definitely a bust in new construction after the 2008 housing crisis.
Yeah.
And new construction slowed up considerably.
Absolutely. Well, they had to, right? Because there was so much uncertainty in the market.
And there was a lot of inventory then.
There was so much inventory. Now it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, we have no inventory.
No inventory.
And new construction is definitely becoming a hot topic again for people.
It is. Like, we talk about like what's happening every week, like in our town. Like, so today, today's Thursday, it's not Wednesday. We're, middle of March, we have 25 homes for sale in all of Glastonbury. That's between condos and single family homes. Of that, 13 of them are new construction, like post 2020.
Wow.
That says something, right?
That does say something. And I think it's interesting because we do get borrowers. There's sort of two trains of thought for new construction is for borrowers. They either think it's either very exciting.
Yes.
Right. I can customize it. I can pick out the finishes I like, or they just automatically see dollar signs. This is going to be more expensive.
For some, they feel like it's unattainable.
Yeah, and it's not always the case.
It's not. Like, I remember like almost 2 years ago, like when I had buyers like in the mix, like with the frenzy, I'm like, let's actually go and look at new construction because we're not fighting with multiple offers at this point. Like, let's pick the home site, pick a floor plan, and start designing your perfect place to call home. It's actually more attainable than you think it could be. Like, I remember because I solely sold new construction for about a decade of my career. And I remember like we used to get, updates like every day. Okay, prices just went up 5,000, and like you could have looked at the house yesterday because inventory was tight back then.
Yeah,
and today it was 5,000 more for no reason. Well, not for no reason. It was again because they could.
Yep.
And that's not the way it is right now. But it might be heading in that direction.
It might be heading in that direction. I think there's been a lot of buzz with buyers trying to alleviate the current housing inventory crunch.
Yeah.
With, well, what if I just build?
Yeah.
Now there's sort of two different ways to do new construction.
Mm-hmm.
So one is you can buy a piece of land and then you can fund a build on the property. So that is where you are fully in control as the buyer. You are talking to architects and contractors and picking your floor plan. And those tend to be very customized because it's one piece of land and one house going on it.
Yeah. And it takes more out of you as a human.
Yep.
And it's with something like that, it is super important to have a professional that has done all this from every detail, like to the flooring, to the cabinetry, to the countertop, to the tile, to the grout, where you put your recessed lights, where the switches are, what type of switches. I remember when I bought my very own, like my first car all by myself. I was so excited. It was like a little Toyota Corolla. And I made the mistake of not speaking with my parents. I'm like, I can do this. I'm an adult. I went in and I'm like, all I want are leather seats, right? Ordered my car. I got it. And I'm like, where's like the power door? Like the locks, I have to like stick a key in to open it. Like nothing was power operated. And they'll go, you didn't choose that option. And I'm like,
oh, no.
Every car I had owned up until that point was used and had it. And I assumed it was a standard feature. When people go to build a house, they assume so many things are standard and nothing is other than whatever code requires.
Yeah, whatever. And when you're building your own in that capacity, you don't have a model to look at.
No.
You're not necessarily looking at, a booklet of house options because sometimes like new developments, there'll be like a book and you're going to pick, you're going to look at the book. I want this model, but I want this finish.
Yeah. And like if you're working with a big builder, you might be lucky enough to possibly travel to another state and walk through that exact model home, or maybe they built it locally and you can physically walk through it. But if you're building from scratch, you may not have that luxury.
Now, the other trick with when you're purchasing raw land and building your own home is the financing is a little bit different. You're usually looking for a construction loan. We often call them one-time closes. And that is where you are either buying the land in cash up front or there's some loan products that will allow you to buy the land and then fund the construction of the house. But interest rates tend to be a little bit higher on those loans. If you run out of money, if things go up, you're kind of left looking for the difference. So they can be a little complicated, not undoable, but just a little complicated.
With that type of loan product, you as a borrower buyer have to be ultra conservative because there are things we have no control over. You know, cost of materials have increased and we don't have control over what happens today versus tomorrow. But if you want X, Y, and Z and it's not locked in, you are going to be subject to eating the difference, basically.
It can be a little tricky. Now, the other type of new construction lending is builder funded new construction. And that's where a builder buys the piece of land. They're often buying a large piece of land, development
land,
and they're going to put multiple houses on it, usually, not always, but usually that's what it looks like. And then they're funding the construction of your home. You have a contract with them and you are still usually picking your fit and finishes, but you're buying the completed house from them at the end. And those can be a little bit, the mortgage side of it's a little bit simpler because you're just taking out a normal purchase loan. It doesn't really look any different. The only real difference is just the only thing you're paying for different is you're usually paying for 2 appraisals. An appraisal based on the plans at the beginning and then an appraisal at the very end, usually like the week before you close, just to make sure that what the appraiser saw in the plans is actually what was built and that the value has remained. Because usually new constructions take a couple of months. They're not the quickest.
No, they take, like, if you're starting from scratch, anywhere from like 8 to 12 months.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, that's a lending option that works for people. But that is, you know, I don't want to say it's the easier option, but it's kind of
it's easier. But then you also have a little bit less control over all the options, unless you're like working with a large builder.
Yeah, exactly. Where it is, how many units. The other thing, you know, to contemplate is if you're buying in a complex that's being built and you're one of the first houses, you may be living in a construction zone for a little bit. However, you're probably going to get priced better at the beginning than you are at the end. The people at the end are paying a premium for the done neighborhood.
Exactly. So from a qualification process, does it take longer to get pre-approved for a construction loan?
It does. It is a little bit more complicated. They are looking a little bit more at your liquid reserves and your liquid assets. It's harder to do with small down payments. That's probably the biggest thing. It's going to be very difficult to self-fund with a 3%, a 5%, or even a 10% down payment. Some of the products have much higher requirements, 20, 25% down. And that, again, is the bank just wants to make sure that you have a lot of skin in the game, okay? Because they don't want to be left, right? For a bank, their collateral on the loan is the house.
And they don't want to own houses.
And they don't want to own houses. And they definitely don't want to own partially finished houses they have to complete in order to sell the asset to get their money back if you were to walk away. So there is a premium for that. So they can be a little bit more difficult to qualify for. I don't generally recommend them for first-time home buyers.
100%.
It's just a lot. It's a lot unless you have experience in construction.
It's also, it's very taxing on the buyer, right? So if this is your first time, and then in addition to that, if you're working with a realtor who's maybe never done new construction, like it adds a lot of stress to the relationship. It's
I would agree. And
very stressful.
Builders are not salespeople. So sometimes that can become a little contentious where what the builder's needs are, what your needs are, what your realtor's needs are. Everybody has kind of like different needs. And I have had some new constructions where, especially at the end, you know, I'm married to a contractor, so I think I can say this. Construction often never happens in the timeline it is anticipated at the beginning. It's for such a long period of time. It's just hard to predict the weather. There's just so many variables that come into play, but the buyers have a closing date that they need to hit. And so they often start to kind of ride the builder about time. So the builder is rushing and then they're frustrated because they're trying to do what they need to do.
And builders are, you know, they can't just make things happen, right? They're governed by the town, you know, the building inspector, possibly the fire marshal coming out for possible things, the engineer, the zoning enforcement officer. Like, there are a lot of players involved. It's not just like, let's do this and make it happen.
Yeah, well, and then the biggest piece is supply chain. Is they're ordering things. And right now that's definitely a consideration. They might order doors and it might take 6 to 9 months for those doors to come in.
We had a situation a couple of years ago, actually, where the garage door came in for a property. Like, we were ready to close and the garage door had, it was defective. like there was like a hole, it was like dented, something happened. You can't get a certificate of occupancy, which means you can't close without that being handled. And at that point, doors were taking months, garage doors. So for that one thing, it could have possibly delayed the closing. Luckily, the builder was creative and was able to like figure something out to get us past that. But it was very stressful.
Well, and sometimes the homeowner ends up making some sacrifices
Yes.
at the end.
You have to be flexible.
You know, I wanted this type of interior doors and we can't get them in. So now I have this type of interior doors. I wanted this tile, but we can't get it in. So I have this tile. So you do have to be flexible. And I think that's where, again, for first-time home buyers, there's just so much to contemplate. It's harder to be flexible. I think the other sort of headache that sometimes happens in new construction is the Pinterest effect.
Yes. Oh, I saw it.
I want this kitchen. Well, the layout of your house, this kitchen doesn't make sense. The ceiling height, this kitchen doesn't make sense. These cabinets are no longer available. This kitchen doesn't make sense. That fridge that you're dying to have is out of stock everywhere. And it's really hard, especially for visual people, that they will like lock into, I want this. And then that just doesn't work for or the biggest elephant in the room with that is their budget.
Their budget doesn't align. So what with new construction, like what I tell my clients is like, get the things that are major that you have to get into. Post closing, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now, you're going to be in a very different financial situation where it might be easier to make some of those cosmetic adjustments. So get the base, get the floor plan the way you want, get some of the electrical the way you want. But like maybe the countertop, maybe you don't pick the countertop that you see on Pinterest, but you get something that's equally nice, but at a friendlier budget.
Yeah, at a friendlier budget. And that's it. You know, I think there are budgets. And
I hate budgets.
My husband always laughs at me because he will give me like three, like he'll be like, we need this. Here's your 3 choices. And I, without fail, pick the most expensive.
Of course,
one.
I do too.
Every single, I'm like, that one. He's like, why? Why do you pick the most expensive? I'm like, I've got great taste.
That's why you picked me.
Yeah, but that's the hard thing too, is that with new construction, you're usually given budgets. So the builder will say, okay, your budget is for tile is $13 a tile or whatever it might be. And then you're sent off to the tile store and then you've picked a $15 tile. You've picked you were given a $300 budget for a sink and you picked a $500 sink. And that is a little bit where we sometimes see those new construction sale prices blossom and start increasing. Like, it's often the buyer who does it.
It is. Like I've even learned like things too. Like, so I build homes. And like my business partner and I will go and we'll pick what we think is like beautiful, hoping that our buyers will love it too. Like even things that I've learned along the way, like the huge tiles, they cost more to begin with, which is great. Like we've gone to Porcelanosa, picked these beautiful tiles, gave it to our tile guy, and we already had a budget for like doing our mud shower. And he was like, you didn't tell me you were going to get these ginormous tiles. I'm like, aren't they so beautiful? He's like, my cost to install is going to double because that's harder. Like there's things that people don't take into consideration. And like we've learned the hard way.
Yeah.
But those are things that, you know, talk about budget. We blew the budget. So
yeah, and it's easy to do. And we've definitely seen that on the lending side where we will pre-qual somebody, you know, at the beginning, 6 to 8 months based on the contract that they go under. And then by the time we get to closing, they've increased the sale price by $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. And sometimes that doesn't work for qualification. We occasionally have to change loan product. There is sometimes some stress that happens in that, you know, interest rates also change during that time.
Yeah, you can't lock in an interest rate for 12 months. Too long.
Yeah. And so it's really, that is always complicated and a little stressful for us. So what we normally do is we will qualify the borrower, but then we will also tell them this is what their max is. Yeah. And then we ask for check-ins along the way of how are we doing on that max? Where are you at this point? And we'd usually tell borrowers to, whatever the contract they've signed for, to probably budget for 20% on top of it, just to be conservative in where things are going to end up. Just, again, you don't know. And I've had them come in exactly at price. I've had them come in $2,000 more. And then we had one that came in $60,000 over budget. The buyer was the main reason for it. She wanted lots of shiplap wall and an upgraded farm sink and different tile. And
it's easy to kind of get carried away because you're like, oh, it's just like $1,000 here, $2,000 here per room. It ends up adding up and you're like, oh, it gets rolled into the mortgage. So
it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But I do think, at the end of the day, new construction is about to really blow up.
It's going to explode. So according to Inman, they're saying over the next 5 years, because again, everyone wants to know where is the inventory, it's going to be up to builders to help present the inventory to our consumers. So
I love it.
Yeah. So guys, thank you so much for watching.
Yes. And if you have any questions or there's a topic that you want to hear about, let us know.
That's a goal. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Thank you for watching.